Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. Our guest today is Forrest Fenn. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Many know you as, of course, the owner of one of Santa Fe's finest art galleries for years and years, but you've also written a wonderful book, wonderful in many ways we'll explore, but I just want to hold it up now. It's called The Thrill of the Chase, a memoir, and it's dedicated to anyone who has known the thrill of the chase. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, I want to talk a little about your background because you bring some really unusual experiences to your work. You were 20 years a fighter pilot with the U.S. Air Force. You flew 328 combat missions in Vietnam.
Yes, ma'am.
And you lived to tell the tale. Thank you. And then you came to Santa Fe after you retired from the military, and you started an art gallery. And you said at that time you'd never studied art, you didn't own a painting, and you didn't know anybody who did. So what made you choose?
Well, I had a bad tour in Vietnam. I was shot down twice, and I lost 22 pounds and didn't even know it. And I worked almost every hour of every day, it seemed like. And when I came home, I was just worn out. And Santa Fe was the only place that I knew where I could wear hush puppies and a short sleeve shirt and maybe make a living. And Santa Fe's an artsy town, so that's what I had to do. And I came to the right place at the right time with the right product, and the art business was good to me, and Santa Fe's been good to me.
Well, your gallery was so special. It was a Fenn gallery right on Paseo de Peralta. And it was, first of all, a beautiful building. You built beautiful gardens and a pond in the back. And you had the finest caliber of art. You had the great masters. But you also had something that was very different from every other gallery because you had signs that said, "Please touch." And why did you do that when everyone else is guarding you and standing between you and the art so you can't even experience
it? I told a story in my book. I went in the Kachina Gallery when I first came to Santa Fe. They were sold nothing but kachinas, and they were just stacked everywhere. And the little signs around said, "If you touch it, you bought it. You are responsible for your kids. Do not touch." And it scared me so bad, I put my hands in my pockets and tried to get out. But I started thinking, I need to learn something from that. So I went back to my gallery and made about 15 little signs that says, "Please touch, I am responsible." The theory is, how can somebody buy a great item if they're not allowed to touch it?
Yeah. You also tell the story in your book about you had one of the most famous portraits of George Washington. And a school group came in.
That's right.
And you actually had each child come up and touch one of America's greatest portraits of our first president.
We had each child wash their hands really good, and I told them not to push, not to scrape, not to use your fingernails, but just gently touch George Washington and close your eyes and think. Because when that portrait was painted, Gilbert Stuart painted it sitting as close as you and I are together with George Washington. So if you can touch that painting in some small way, you may make a connection with those two people. I mean, it's worked for me. People collect autographs for the same reason, the connection that they lack. And, I feel sorry for people that don't have that depth of imagination.
Yeah. Yes, because one of our mutual favorite quotes is that Albert Einstein quote, "Imagination is more important than knowledge."
That's Einstein.
Yeah.
And I believe it.
I do too. But I want to mention one other thing that was unique about your gallery and about autographs, because you have these exquisite guest houses sited on the property around the pond. Mm-hmm. Tell us some of the guests that have stayed there.
Oh, gee, when I built the big guest house, my accountants in L.A. told me it was the dumbest thing that I ever did. And about 2 years later, he called me on the phone and said, "You pay for that thing 4 times a year. It's just the smartest thing you ever did."
Uh-huh.
But we had Jackie Kennedy and President Ford and endless movie stars, Robert Redford, and John Connolly was a frequent guest. And and have a guest register. You know, I had them sign the guest register and make a doodle, and it's wonderful. I've saved all those things.
You said that Cher in particular had this wonderful
Cher
doodle.
had a flair, and we were sitting by the fireplace in the guest house, and one of her boyfriends was with her, and he was, I think, her manager, and she was in town to be on a live award show in Albuquerque, and the producer of the show walked in, and this agent said, "Well, what's Cher supposed to do at the show tonight?" Cher said, "I'll wing it." She didn't want to know what he wanted. She just do it her way, and you know that's the way she was. And she signed her name the same way. And I think that's her personality. That's a metaphor for who Cher is.
Yeah.
She can do anything.
Yeah. You've always been a collector, which manifested itself in the art collection at the gallery. But in your book, you talk about how you used to collect soda pop caps.
Soda pop caps.
And you had, because each one was from a bottle that you had drunk. But tell us what your father did to change your attitude toward that collection.
Well, I learned a lot from him, and he was subtle in some of the things he did. I had probably 100 bottle caps. And you know how kids are, they're on the floor, they're on the radio, they're on his desk, and he decided he'd cure me one day, so he went around all the gas stations that sold pop and collected all their caps. In a huge box, he came home that night and handed me, must have been several thousand bottle caps. Absolutely ruined me. I mean, how can you continue to collect bottle caps if it looks like you have all of them that were ever made already? And within an hour, I had lost interest in all those.
But you never lost interest in collecting and the thrill of the chase.
The thrill of the chase.
And so I want to talk about your book, The Thrill of the Chase. And it's a memoir, so you have wonderful stories about your life. I think really it's a fabulous read. But you also have a treasure hunt. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this show is to have you talk about the treasure hunt that you've set out and why you are doing it.
There's a good quote in the New Devine book, and it says, "They never knew that it was the chase they sought and not the quarry." Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But it's, in the art business, I love to find a great painting. But there was a letdown after I found it because the chase was over. Anybody can sell a great painting, but not everybody can find one. So the thrill was in the chase, and I loved that and still do.
So at this time as we speak, you have you have placed a treasure somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe.
That's right.
And it is in an 11th century box. At least describe the treasure chest.
It's in an 11th century Romanesque Bible box, or a box of letters. And it's a beautiful box. I gave a fortune for that thing, but I loved it so much. And then when I got sick in 1988, they took a kidney out and found a big cancerous tumor under the kidney, and they gave me a 20% chance of living 3 years. And that'll open your eyes and makes you start thinking about mortality. And finally, after a couple of weeks after that soaked in, one night about 3 o'clock, I told myself, well, if I've got to go, I'm just going to take it with me. And that's when I got the box and started filling it up with what I call precious things. There are 20.2 troy pounds of gold in that chest, and lots of jewelry, bracelets, necklaces, diamonds, emeralds, rubies.
And to be a little more specific, there's a bracelet that has 246 rubies and emeralds and diamonds, and a Spanish 17th century gold ring with a big emerald in it.
I bought that bracelet from Eric Sloan, but he had given it to his wife and she didn't like it. So I bought it from him. But
and gold coins and gold nuggets, some of which weigh a pound.
There are two gold nuggets in there that weigh more than a pound apiece, placer nuggets from Alaska, and 225 gold coins.
And gold frogs from Costa Rica or Panama, pre-Columbian.
Pre-Columbian, things that date 11th and 12th century.
So these are truly treasures, and you put them all in this beautiful treasure chest.
What I told myself was that when I was building this thing was, I'm 80 years old, so, the handwriting is on the wall. But I told myself, I've had so much fun over the decades, 6 decades, collecting these things. Now, if I've got to go, why not pass it on to someone else? Let somebody else have the same kind of fun that I have had. And that's why I wrote the poem that's in my book. There are 9 clues in that poem. If you can follow the clues to the chest, you can have it. And the poem says that.
And all we know is that we can't even geographically make it narrow it down anymore.
People are always asking me that question. The other day I said,
I'm just 100 square miles.
I'll give you a clue for your readers. The chest is more than 300 miles west of Toledo.
Okay.
And it's not in Nevada, so those are big clues.
Okay. Okay. Well, and we want people to have the thrill of the chase.
Well, I've got a friend here in town that's been out looking for it 9 different days. He owns a shop here, and he only gets off on Sunday, but he heads out. I don't think he's found it. He hasn't told me.
Well, that's what I want to know. How will we know if somebody finds it? Will you make an announcement?
Depends on the person. The person that finds it may not want the IRS to know it.
Oh, that's true.
In which case, I'll never know it, probably.
Finders, keepers,
But the kind of person that would go out and find it is the same kind of person that can't keep it quiet.
Yeah.
He's like me, he's got to broadcast it.
Now, does anyone else besides you know where this is?
Nobody.
Because you had said one of your lines from the book is that two men can keep a secret as long as one of them is dead.
That's an old mafia saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's wonderful. I've read the poem. I could only determine one clue. So I doubt that I'm going to be the person who finds the treasure chest.
Well, don't give up. It's the thrill of the chase.
It is the thrill of the chase. But another thing that you've done that I find so moving is you have had these bronze bells created, beautiful bells, and the clapper is a 17th century Spanish nail. Tell us about those beautiful bells.
At night, I make bells out of wax, and around the edges I write different things, and then I'm burying them with my name and the date. I really don't want anybody to find them for 1,000 or 10,000 years. And the Rosetta Stone was buried for 2,000 years before it was found. Don't you know that guy's proud today?
Yeah, and did you say on one of the bells, you say, if you find this 1,000 years after my death, ring this bell.
So I will know.
So I will know.
I think that's pretty good.
And you're burying them deep so that...
Well, I'm burying them deep enough so that normally a metal detector won't find them, 3 and 3.5 feet deep. Most metal detectors, although the bells are, they weigh 4 and 5, 6 pounds a piece. So, technology being what it is, somebody will find those bells. But if somebody finds them in 200 years, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that you have looked at this issue of permanence and impermanence and what do we have of our life. In your book, you describe this jungle clearing you had flown over with the waterfall. You always want to go. So as you were leaving, I think it was in Laos, right? Mm-hmm. You stopped in there. You came down in the helicopter to look around.
Well, I felt like I owed it to that grave marker. The grave marker said, "If you should ever think of me when I have passed this veil and wish to please my ghost, forgive a sinner and smile at a homely girl." But I didn't know that. I didn't find that until I went down there after I was shot down the day before. Picked up, taken to Nakhon Phanom, Thailand in a helicopter and flew back to Thuy, South Vietnam, where I was stationed. Then I talked to an Army buddy who had a helicopter to take me out there. It was very moving. It changed my life, and I talk about that at some length in my book.
And that's why I really love the issues that you bring up, because what do we have? What do we leave behind? As long as someone remembers us and says a prayer for us, we live that long, but that's just a couple of generations.
People, your listeners will say, some of them will say, I don't have anything to leave behind, but they do. They need to write their memoirs, even if they write it out in pencil and paper. Send it to the Library of Congress, date it, and sign your name, and put everything you know about yourself in that. Because 100 or 500 years from now, that's going to be an important document.
Yeah, well, look at, the stuff from medieval times, what they had for breakfast.
That's right, and we all have so much to offer.
You say, can you repeat your what you've chosen to be your epitaph? I wish I could have lived to do the things I was
attributed to. Well, I've been accused of some pretty serious things in my lifetime. And sometimes there's a little smoke, sometimes there's not. But I wish I could have done all the things that people accuse me of doing. I would have lived a much better,
Many
much
more lives.
yeah, much more fun.
Yeah. I want to come back to the gallery for a minute because you've raised some very, very interesting issues. I have been a follower of a man named Elmire de Hory, who was the best art forger in the world, and he even forged the Howard Hughes manuscript. That I mean, there's just it's a very big case in history, and his work.
Clifford Irving wrote
Clifford
that manuscript.
Irving.
Yeah.
Yes, and so you would sell. You and former Governor John Connally of Texas bought a bunch of Elmire de Hory's, and you would sell them. And he never signed his work, and he did not copies of masters, but pastiches.
In the style of.
In the style.
If he
of.
copied one, then he would be found out. These were actually forgeries. He said that all the great American museums have his paintings and don't know it.
Well, they're called master fleeces, and you know, from the 80s on, this has been a big thing in the art world. But you had said some really interesting things. If they're as good as real, if they look as good as real, then what are we talking about? What is art? And I'd read that you had said, you know, people would see one of these paintings, fall in love with it, and then when they found out it wasn't the real thing, they would just be, you know, they wouldn't want it. And you'd say, if you loved it. When you saw it, you stopped loving it as soon as you knew there was no signature. Who is the fake here?
That's right.
The painting on the wall or you?
So when I was a kid, I started making rules. When something significant would happen to me, I'd make a rule. And always my first rule, when I sold my gallery, I had 109 rules. Number one on the list was this: it doesn't matter who you are. It only matters who they think you are. That's how Andy Warhol got there. That's how Neiman Marcus got there, and I could go on and on.
Well,
So,
I'm going to finish that quote for you, because then you say, it's true in Hollywood, it's true in politics, and it's true with a painting. It doesn't matter who you are, it's who they think you are. That's a good first rule.
well, as a salesman, you know, it doesn't matter how good that aluminum pan is. It only matters how good he can make you think it is. If he can make you think it's really great, he can sell it to you. I said also in my book that no salesperson has ever been accused of understating.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yes.
We're all charlatans to some degree, you know, about ourselves, you know. I thought one time that women are fakes themselves. They wear lipstick and mascara. They're misrepresenting the product.
Well, there's an art to that, Forrest.
That's right.
There is an art to
and
that.
it propagates the thrill of the chase.
Yes, exactly. But the whole thing about what is real art and what is fake art and forgeries, one of my favorite aspects of your other line of business, which is Native American artifacts, is the Coyote Trickster who lies to bring you the truth. So if you ultimately arrive at the truth, does it matter how you got there?
But you know, all societies have had fetishes. You know, they're called different things, but with American Indians, there are a lot of different fetishes. And the fetish is not worth anything unless you believe in it. But if you believe in it, it can be awesome.
Yeah.
The most primitive tribes, even in New Guinea and the Amazon jungle, they all have fetishes of one kind or another. Very important. And all religions today have fetishes. They don't call them that, but that's what they are. And it's important that we believe.
And my academic work was in shamanism. So if you're in the Amazon and the sorcerer, the medicine man, comes around, plays his rattle and chants, and then pulls a feather out of your ear saying the enemy sorcerer put it there, and then you are well, does it matter whether it is objectively true or not if you are well? That's the goal.
It doesn't matter what it is. It only matters what you think it is.
Yeah.
And what it can do for you and what you can offer with it. Very important.
So you had quite a Native American collection in the gallery?
I collected things, yes.
Yeah. Tell us what your favorites were. I know there's a couple of items of world class that you have.
Well, I started collecting arrowheads because I didn't have any money, and my father would take me out and we'd walk the river bottoms and across plowed fields and pick up arrowheads and scrapers and different things. And wonderful experience, and that was my first love and still is. And I still have my collection of arrowheads. And the first arrowhead I ever found is probably my most cherished object, because I picked it up, and my father saw me do it, and he saw the expression on my face when I decided that that was an arrowhead, and I was 9 years old. And he told me every year until he died, it was one of his thrills to look at me and see that I had such a satisfied look on my face. Well, contentment is the key word. If you can go through this life being contented, then there's nothing better than that.
Well, and how lucky you were that you had a dad that was that perceptive to know.
And we have a problem in this country today with our youth, and part of the problem is that fathers are not taking their sons and daughters out to not only collect arrowheads, but fishing and hunting and just hiking and picking up rocks, or, and explaining geology and biology and those things. Very important, and everyone is remiss today because of that.
Yeah.
And our future could look better if we'd shape up some.
I'd like to go down the Native American path a little more. Tell me, you have one of your books is called The Secret of San Lazaro Pueblo.
The Secrets of San Lazaro Pueblo. It's a book I wrote about the things that I excavated at a pueblo that I own called San Lazaro. It was first inhabited about 1150 AD, and everybody left at the revolt in 1680. But there's about 5,000 rooms out there, and I've dug right at 1% of the rooms. And this book illustrates all the great things that we've excavated out of there.
Well, there are archaeologists who said you've really done an impeccable job of cataloging everything. And
there are archaeologists that don't like me because I don't have a PhD and I don't work exactly like they do. So.
And you don't give them what you find. That's one of the reasons they don't like you. They would like to have that, the treasures.
Do it? They'd put it in a basement in a box and nobody'd ever see it again.
Well, that's Craig Childs, who wrote Finders Keepers, has this question: who owns the past? And
that's an interesting question. You want me to answer it?
Yes.
The guy that has the title.
Oh.
He's the one that owns the past.
But, he describes himself he spent so much time in the wilderness, and he found this one place where every burial tomb of this people was looted. And he went, and he talks about this, he went and stole a little broken pot back so that he could bury it with the spirits of those people, at some risk to himself, because he felt that was the right thing to do. Then he thought, wait a minute, I'm doing what I accuse everyone else of doing. Everyone else is doing what they think is right about these things. It's a very interesting area.
It's called finder's remorse.
Ah, yeah. So one of the objects that you own, if you could speak about it, is Sitting Bull's pipe. The very one in all the photographs, the very one. And you often say that it's not always so much the object, but the story of the object.
Well, this man offered me what he called was Sitting Bull's pipe. It's a beautiful pipe, but not special, really. And it came with a picture of Sitting Bull holding a pipe that looked like the one that he was offering me. So I said, well, leave the pipe with me overnight so let me do some forensics on it, and I'll show you that it's not the same pipe. So my daughter and I got in the computer and took pictures and blew them up, and I saw grain in the wood and the stem on this pipe, and we looked around at the picture, and my golly, we started turning that thing around, and we made the picture transparent, put it on the one of Sitting Bull holding the pipe, and it was exactly. It had to be the same pipe. I was startled. I've been offered so many things. I was offered the knife that killed Caesar. It came with a notarized letter.
Well, who's and was it?
You're easy.
I know. And you researched it, and of course it was not.
I didn't even research it. Yeah. I didn't want to get into
that. Another story you tell in your book is where you got the nails that you put in these bells. It was in Wyoming. Someone they'd found the ruins of a conquistador protruding from an arroyo. They had the horse, the bones, all the accoutrements.
These were brass tacks, and this guy drove into the little town of Meeteetse, Wyoming, and it was 35, 40, I hate to tell you how old I am, but it was a long time ago, and I was getting some gas, and this pickup truck pulled in there, and a couple of guys got out really excited, and in a minute there was 5 or 6 people standing around really excited, and I walked over there, and there was a horse skeleton and a human skeleton in the back of this pickup truck, and an old bridle, and I forget now what it was, but chainmail, and this thing was a 16th or 17th century Spanish, I hate to say conquistador, but certainly an explorer. And this rancher had found it eroding out of an arroyo on his land.
And you took the tacks?
Well, they took the thing inside the building there, an old abandoned house. And I looked in the pickup truck, and there were a bunch of brass tacks out of the horse gear that had fallen out and were laying in the pickup truck. And I asked the guy that owned it, I said, if I jump in there and pick those things up, can I have them? He said, yes. He said, we have enough. And I still have those things.
Well, to me, again, it's the story almost as value as much as the actual tax. And so because we're almost out of time, I want to ask you, what is the thrill of the chase for you now? You do wonderful writing. You have a blog. I enjoy your reading and want you to keep on writing. But what else gives you the thrill of the chase?
If you sit down, you start to decompose.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I mean, there's so many things that I want to do, so many things that I don't want to be laying on my deathbed and say, I wish I had winked that little girl in Peoria, 67 years ago. There's so many good things to do, and we spend too much time resting.
Yeah, you rest. Yes. One more thing, can you tell our people about the treasure hunt and where to find the clues?
Well, in my book there's a poem, like I said, and there are 9 clues in the poem, and the clues are in consecutive order. If you can read that, if you want to find a treasure chest, you have my book there. I'll tell you how to do it. Read the book just normally, the poem and the rest of the book, and then go back and read the poem 6, 8, 10 times. Study every line, every word. Then after you do that, read the book again slowly with the idea of looking for clues or hints that are in the book that will help you follow the clues. You can find the chest with just the clues, but there are hints in the book that'll help you with the clues.
Again, the book is The Thrill of the Chase, and let's just say a word about the proceeds for this. You are not doing the treasure hunt to sell books. You actually have a very kind and charitable arrangement.
Well, I didn't want people to say that I did it, that the treasure chest was a gimmick to sell the book. So I've given all the books to the Collected Work bookstore here in town.
In Santa Fe.
All that they can sell, they can have for free. And they're putting in a fund 10% of the gross from the sale of these books. And when we get enough money, we're gonna buy a cancer operation for some little kid that can't afford it. And that's one of our goals. Well, and we have people donating money to us just for that fund.
Yeah. Well, it has been a thrill, the thrill of the chase, to actually sit down and interview.
Well, thank you. You've done your homework on this thing.
Yeah.
Finally, I found somebody that read my book.
I read every bit of it, and I loved it.
Well, you're a sweetheart. Thank you.
Our guest today is Forrest Fenn. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And I'm Lorene Mills. I wish you all the thrill of the chase. This is Report from Santa Fe, and we'll see you next week.
Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.